and a 9 and a 4 and a 3 and a 2 and a 1.
And here we
take it away, June.
All righty. I want to thank you for joining our session today on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we all know, we are in unprecedented times with change at the forefront. After the George Floyd incident, we had some real talk about it on our Lahu social hour, where we have open discussion. And to say the least, it was very raw. But everyone was supportive, open, and found the conversation to be informative. What an amazing board we have. I can't say that enough. They left that meeting, thought about it, and then took action. So Wayne and I were pleasantly surprised when we were asked to lead the charge on diversity, equity, and inclusion for the chapter. I can't begin to tell you the outpouring support and encouragement we have received locally and throughout the country. It's just amazing. Words can't express how grateful we are to our commitment to change. Our goal today is to bring insight, education, personal and professional stories to all who are open to learn and make a difference in our industry and our local communities. So I'm excited to introduce, or excited that April Lewis and Carol French from Figure 8 Consulting agreed to facilitate today's panel discussion. They are the national consultants for Kaiser Permanente's diversity program. These ladies are nothing short of dynamic. They are well versed in this area and they know our industry. I know they will keep it fun, interesting, and on point. So with that being said, Wayne, my co-chair, my mentor, my friend, did I miss anything?
No, you hit it out of the park, I tell you. It's exciting to be here. Thank you, everybody, and such a blessing to have such a diverse panel coming from all over the place, from Oregon, from San Francisco, from Newport Beach, from Mexico. So it's great to be here, and we are truly blessed that people at the NAHU level, at the LAHU level, have decided not just to talk about the issue, but to take action and to put forth a task force of diversity, equity, and inclusion that will give us the opportunity to embrace with all of you and hear your stories, your thoughts, and put forth some recommendations, both here at the local and at the national level. So I've already used up, I'm just the eye candy joke too many times, so I won't say it again. Oh, I said it. So without further ado, let me turn it over to April and Carol, who will be our facilitators today, and remind all of you that if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, because we'd like to leave time for a few of those at the end, and I'm going to get out of the way and let them take it away. Thank you, my friends.
Great, thank you, Wayne. Well, we are very happy to be here with all of you this morning. Thank you for showing up, and we're excited about the panel that we have for you today. And I'm April Lewis, and that's Carol French, and we are the very best that Figure 8 Consulting LLC Portland, Oregon has to offer. Here we are, there's the best. You got our best today because we knew that this topic was important and that the questions might be challenging, and so we brought our best people. I should say, in all honesty, we're the only people, but we are the best, so there you go. This is us being very culturally agile with each other, so.
So just briefly about Figure 8 Consulting, we've been doing this work a long time, individually and then also with Figure 8 Consulting. We have a very deep passion about this work. We have an extremely diverse family, certainly racially, yes, ethnically, and in terms of many other aspects of who we are as individuals. And so that fact makes this work very, very personal for us. This is happening at a perfect time. We all know the times that we're in and all of the things that have come together to make these times difficult and challenging. And when the quarantine first started in Oregon, we thought maybe we would have to stop working, because we thrive in the work that we do on making personal connections with people and training in person and meeting people and all that sort of thing. And we thought, wow, are we not going to be able to work again? And thanks to a tech guy that we've used over the years, we have begun to be, I think, reasonably adept at doing this stuff virtually. I can say that. April's the one that manages that. So, and we're really happy to be doing this work. And also, I want to say that this journey, this short but really meaningful journey with Wayne and June has been fantastic.
It has,
so,
amazing.
Yes.
The tagline for our company is creating cultural connections, and that's exactly what we've been able to do. So it's just so exciting to be here today. So let's get going with our next thing. So we're going to just spend a few minutes grounding all of us in this world of diversity and culture. And we're going to show you a graphic and describe it a little bit, just so we all sort of create a common understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about diversity. So this is actually created by our friends Lee Garden-Schwartz and Anita Rowe, who live in LA. So they're your local folks as well. So in the middle of this graphic is personality. And that is a very key part of who we are in terms of our diversity and our culture. And personality, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that it comes into the world with us, really already set and developed, well developed, and then it's influenced by different things as we go along. I know this for sure because of our twin grandchildren. When they were born, we could see their personalities minutes after coming into the room where all the nurses were gathered to take care of them. Jason was screaming his head off and Morgan was laying back enjoying the hair washing. I mean, that's exactly how they are now today at 16, very much the same. Jason takes life pretty seriously and gets upset easily, and Morgan is more, well, it'll all work out. I don't know. So that's that. And then the next layer, Carol.
So the next layer.
One click, June, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. The next layer is what is sometimes called the primary layer. These are the immutable aspects of who we are as individuals, and they are what they are, and they have a huge influence not only in terms of how we see the world, but also how people see us, the assumptions that are made about us, the stereotypes that people have of these groups have a great deal to do with how we're seen, opportunities that we either have or don't have. Age being one. I am the age that I am, which I'm not going to say at this time, but
I will.
But it is what it is. And so it's not just the number of years, for example, it's the cohort, the generational cohort that I grew up with, all of the things that were going on in the world when I was in high school, middle school, and college, and in my early teaching career. So race and ethnicity, whether you have a disability or not, what kind of disability that might be, have you had it all your life or did you acquire it or whatever, sexual orientation and gender identity, these are extremely important aspects of who we are. They're also in some ways the most difficult to bridge when we're trying to make connections with other people. Again, if I used age as an example, if you're 70 and you're trying to connect with somebody that's 16, sometimes that gap can seem very large, and all of those in that circle tend to be that way.
Good.
Anything to add to that?
No.
Okay.
So this is the layer out. These are more secondary characteristics or dimensions of diversity and culture, and they're ones that we have more choice over. So you can see where you live, geographic locations, all the different places you've lived, whether you're a veteran or not. Are you a citizen? Do you have religious and spiritual practices, etc.? So these, again, can be very big filters for people. For some people, maybe religion, has all of the structure of how they live their lives and operate in their lives. So it's a very big lens, and it feels like maybe central or core to who they are. So again, more choice about these. And it's the combination of all these things that actually gives us the cultural lenses that we look through to make sense of the world. And as Carol said, the world is looking through these lenses at us and determining how to treat us and how they're going to behave around us. So there's one more layer we add on just to make sure we understand how complex this is, and that's the organizational layer. And you can look at that in terms of your own area of business, or you can look at the LAHU organization. but these also characteristics also influence how you operate in the world and how you're seen in the world. So the combination of these characteristics and even more, this is just a representation of a few, as I said, provides us the lenses, the cultural lenses that we look through. But also, this is where our biases come from. So when we do a lot of work around unconscious bias, and we use this as the foundation to knowing yourself and understanding how you are seen in the world, but how you operate in the world based on these cultural characteristics. I was doing diversity training, one of my corporate jobs, and I asked a young white man, well, tell me something about your cultural background. And he got very scared looking and puzzled. And he said to me, you know, I don't have one. I'm just normal. And he really meant that in a sincere way. He had no idea about the cultural influences that were so prevalent in his life. So if you have been a part of many of the large sort of dominant cultural groups in the US, this may be news to you, right? Your cultural programming may be invisible. And if you want to move forward in this area, that self-awareness and finding out who you are as a cultural being is really, really important. So anything else, Carol?
I think maybe the only other thing I would add, and I think I might have alluded to it, is that when the aspects of who we are as a cultural being intersect, so if my race intersects with my gender and then intersects with where I was raised, for example, you could pick those as from 3 different layers or whatever, it becomes a very complicated thing. And we talk about intersectionality. That's a piece of what intersectionality actually means. And that's kind of another training, but I wanted to mention that anyway. So
great.
Yeah.
Good. If you have questions about this, please put it in the chat and we'll either respond now or we'll make sure we get back to you. So love to send that copy of the diversity wheel out to anybody who's interested in it.
Right.
So now for the most important part of our session today, our panel members, and thank you all so much for taking time to come together with us today to talk about this very important set of issues. So we're going to start with question 1 with Seema. We're going to ask you first. The panel members will rotate through, and we have 3 questions we're going to try and get through, and we will be finishing at 10:25.
Yeah, 10:25.
Yeah. So Seema, first question, how does a diversity, equity, and inclusion focus and strategy benefit businesses, organizations, and or individuals? Why do we care about this?
Hi, everyone. I'm Seema. I lead diversity, inclusion, and belonging for a tech company in San Francisco called Anaplan. And thank you for asking this question, Carol and April. When a company has a strong, amount of diversity, comes true diversity of thought. Think about some of the conversations that you've had, perhaps with people who have had a difference of opinion. Those conversations are incredibly hard to have and can be quite uncomfortable. But with that discomfort comes change. Much like when using a muscle that you have not used, what does your body do? It shakes, right? It hurts, it's sore the next day, but with time, you see a positive change. This is the journey that I feel that we are on specifically right now, just that discomfort because there's a lot of conversations that are happening that have not happened before, sadly, in the workplace, and they need to happen. Going into equity and inclusion, if you create that environment for your employees, you're more likely to hold on to the diverse talent that you recruit. Otherwise, let's face it, you can hire a diverse candidate pool. However, if you don't create that culture of inclusion and belonging where people feel respected for their cultural backgrounds and unique voices, it's really hard to create that sense of belonging and have that talent want to stay. And you basically, by creating that culture, you increase employee engagement and have a lower turnover, leaving space for true creativity and innovation. So thereby, all of this makes your company more successful.
Great. What a great response. Thank you so much, Seema, for kicking us off. Carl, we'd love to hear from you. Same question. Can you unmute, Carl? Carl, we can't hear you.
Unmute.
Unmute. Carl, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
I guess when you're 82, you're not quite as fast as you used to be. But I look at it as from a more global perspective. I've traveled an awful lot in my life. And I feel that it's very important that we take advantage of all the intellectual capital we can to make our institutions as competitive as possible. And those institutions that are our way of life here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to leave people behind based on race, sexual orientation, or any other reason. Because the world is a much smaller place now than ever before. Technology has made the world very, very small. So in order for us to maintain our competitiveness in this grand experiment called the United States of America, we must take advantage of all of the diversity, all of the equality and equity as possible. And that's my point of view. I think it's short-sighted anytime a corporation makes a distinction of no consequence in hiring an employee or promoting an employee. In my business, what I've done, I've had people from several nations that were controllers of my business. I've had over 100 employees, of which many of them were from the LGBTQ community. We speak 8 or 9 languages. So it doesn't make any difference. And that's why we've been successful, because of the cultural unity and comfortability that people have with our employees. Wow, I don't want to go on and on, but I just wanted to get that little bit in.
That's great. That was Carl, great. Thank you so much. And I think you're our new idol now. If we can continue to get smart, we might be as smart as you when we get to your age. All right. Thank you so much. And next, we're going to hear from Eva.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Eva Medalek, and I am a certified high performance coach and a relationship success coach, which means that I help executives and entrepreneurs reach that next level of potential and performance in their lives. And when it comes to diversity, inclusion, equity, I actually believe that companies and individuals need to be careful of the tokenism piece of it, which is it's actually a practice of doing something only to give that appearance, that people are treated fairly to prevent criticism. And so you've got to ensure that your employees aren't being called upon to be the lone representative for their entire group. And how companies can help is by having more than one person from each demographic. And to bring that to the next level or layer, it's also the responsibility of the individual to build relationships within the companies and corporations so that they, because feeling like a token, if you're the only representative, can be very, very draining. So, number one, have more than one representative. And number two, make sure as the individual that you're working hard to develop these relationships within the community, because that's very important as well.
Love that response. So great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So great. And everybody, you can see how the different perspectives that people bring, that's the beauty of diversity, right? That we get these different ideas, the intellectual diversity. And, we're so much better together with all these great ideas than any of us are alone. So with that, Ross, would you like to finish up question 1, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Ross Pendergraph, and first I'd like to say, don't let this white face fool you in that thinking that I don't believe in diversity. First of all, I'll just tell you, I'm a gay man, and living the gay life is definitely, try growing up in the world I grew up in. And then maybe just to finish that off, I'm also married to a very nice gentleman, and he happens to be Latino. So I think I have a few points going for me in my favor. So to answer the question here, what the question was, I always try to bring a little humor to things. And from the movie Forrest Gump, I think we always remember the saying from Forrest, my mama always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So from this, we can see that life is unpredictable and that they're always full of surprises. And you never know what's gonna happen next. Bottom line is this adds to the life and having great experiences. This is a great way of looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. The box of chocolates is diversity. In the same way we have all sorts of different pieces in the box, we have race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, nationality, age, and religion, and the list goes on. Equity is the fact that all the pieces in the box are equal in their own way and that no one piece is better than the other. Inclusion is knowing that all the pieces in the box make up the entire box and they're all delightful. So when you take diversity, equity, and inclusion and put that as your central focus in what you're doing as your strategy, your mission and goals have greater impact. That is because having varied perspectives helps generate better ideas to solve complex problems of a changing and increasingly diverse world. Thank you.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Wow, panel, you are even more impressive than I thought you would be.
Right.
So Carol's going to handle question 2.
All right. This is great. So question 2, from your perspective to the panelists now, how do you differentiate between equity and equality, which is a question that we get a lot. And so we're going to start this round with Carl.
Thank you for the question. The difference between equity and equality can be confusing, but basically, equity is about giving to people what they need. Mm-hmm. It's about need. So if you take a look at this picture here, I don't know if you can see it. Mm-hmm. You have 3 people watching a baseball game with a fence. And of course, equity would be for the people that are shorter, that they would stand on boxes of various heights to offset their height so they could see the game. Equality would mean that everybody would get a box of the same height. Mm-hmm. So that would mean that some people would not be able to see the game. So I think it's important that from our business point of view, sometimes you can spend a little time and develop a person and make that person a winner, a #1 employee, someone who may have had a academic deficiency or some other deficiency. But equality would mean that you would treat your entire class as if they were all members of Mensa and with the same IQ, you know? Yeah. So you know, that never happens, right? Right. So equity, to me, means how do you level the playing field? How do you get the best out of everybody?
Perfect. Love that.
That was great.
Really great. Okay. And then Eva, you're next, please.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, don't you think? I mean, I love that illustration. I've actually used that. I have a Facebook group called The Intimacy of Race where we have these intimate discussions about it. And so what I'll add is very brief. I you know, from my understanding of it, equity has more to do with the opportunities that you are presented, that you are given opportunities to create the success and the growth. And like Carl said, you're given what you needed to have these opportunities. And equality has more to do with just being treated equally as an individual, similar to what he shared about the boxes. Okay, everybody gets the same thing and they'll deal with it. But when you're doing for equity, well, you know what, if I'm shorter than you, I'm actually going to need a taller box to have the same opportunity. So I'm not going to really mess up what he already so beautifully articulated. So
Great.
thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Eva.
And next, Ross.
Well, thank you very much. You know, this is something that a lot of people they really get it wrong. They really mix the two up and don't really understand exactly what it is. But equity, for me, comes from our U.S. Constitution, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, which these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to me is equality. But the problem is, when we talk about equity, in my opinion, this is what we're really missing. Equity is making sure that everyone has access to these unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Just like Carl pointed out, when you're viewing a ball game, we all have the right to view that ball game, but are we all given equal access to view it to the best of our own individual abilities? And then some of the things that we should think about when it comes to this is the corporate boards in America. You know, most of the corporate boards in America, as we're finding out, certainly not a Dickerson employee benefits, but certainly the other corporate boards, we're finding out that there is no diversity when it comes to color, and there's no diversity when it comes to having females on the board. So these are the things that we need to reach out and start changing. And just in our own organization, the National Association of Health Underwriters, I look at people back east, and we had this conversation with one of the people from Ohio. We're just not very diverse. And I think that's what Wayne and June and several of us are going to try and change, is we need to change, and we need to have a more diverse organization if our organization is going to survive. So thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great
Thank you.
comments. And Seema, anything to add?
Yes, I mean, everything was so well said, but really, as Carl mentioned, it's needs, right? So if you, as a company, create an environment that creates the equal access and opportunities for everyone, Carol and April, you touched on intersectionality, right? So ensuring that, you know, you provide accessible workspaces, eliminating any discrimination, whether it be in your literature or the walls of your workplace, offering gender neutral restrooms, you know, ensuring that you are able to provide an environment that, like I said, provides equal access to everyone.
Yeah, great. So there are many, and all good comments, panel, thank you. There are many images that have come. The baseball one that you saw was one of the first ones that we saw. Now there's a big contention about that. So please follow up on it and read about it. It's really interesting. I will also send out a link to one that we use that has to do with bicycles and a bicycle race, and that equity is everybody gets in the race with an equal start, right? And go ahead. Well, Carol wants to say something.
Well,
Hang on.
what I was going to say, the interesting thing in listening to the panel on this particular question is to think about, and Ross mentioned I think it was Ross mentioned the Constitution, and it's how things have evolved since that time. All men were created equal, right? And so it left out a whole half of the human race, starting with that. And then it left out Black people, right? For reasons that we all know about. And so how we've evolved over time in trying to make sure that everybody actually does have equitable access. So, you know, I come from a background in public education. I know the history of that as well. And so it's really interesting. And so that those things, those historical changes and shifts, and is why we have the Constitution is a living document. It's why we have amendments, because when we see that something's not working, we get to put something else in to try to write that. So I was
Very good.
that over when all of you were talking. That was great. Thank you.
Okay. And it's question 3.
So question 3. We get this a lot, and I'm really interested in hearing what all of you have to say about question 3, which is, how do you or would you respond when someone makes the comment, I don't see color?
And we're going to start with Eva this time.
Yeah, that question is one. I know that it's coming from good hearts and good intentions, but when you choose not to see my color, you choose not to see and acknowledge me for who I am and what I am, as if I am somehow inferior as a Black woman. And, you know, and I believe that statement comes from, it has a lot to do with that good-bad binary. Like, if I don't see color, I'm free of racism. So when you choose color blindness, or even the opposite, color celebration, by naming all of the people of color that you know in your life and, you know, that you like or that are in your family, it's really an attempt to exempt yourself from any responsibility or acknowledgement of participation in the problem. So I want you to see me, my color, celebrate my color, but don't be colorblind and don't be color celebratory in the way that, you know, I was best friends with a Black person, and, you know, I have Black people in my family, and my son-in-law is this, or my sister is this. You know, I even had my husband do that to me. My wife is Black, so that exempted him. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And my husband is European and from Germany. So we get to see and celebrate all of us for who we really are. And when you say you don't see color, it really is in response for you taking that individually on as being called a racist. And so you make it mean that you're a bad person. And so it really goes to the good and bad binary of all that. So see it, acknowledge it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Wow. What a response. Amazing. Thank you so much. There was so much involved in what you said. Beautiful job.
The good,
If I
bad,
had more
binary.
time, I'd keep going, believe me.
Okay, and Ross, we're going to ask you next.
All right. Well, thank you. Eva, you're right on with that. I always, my belief is that when someone says, I don't see color, they're lying. It's like someone saying, oh, I don't see gender. Oh, really? You don't see gender? Now, right on with what Eva was saying, when you basically say to people, you don't see color, you're basically saying you don't even see that person. You don't even understand who they are. And I think we all need to acknowledge that. So I'd like to recommend a really great book. It's called White Fragility. For those people who are, there we go. So for those people that are having a hard problem with it, you know, back when Wayne and June and I were talking, you know, what we need to do as far as our committee goes, you know, the biggest things are education. We really need to educate people on, you know, what this is all about. And I'll just leave it at that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for plugging that book. And actually, if you are interested, all of Robin DiAngelo's work is really, really fascinating. She's doing a half-day session tomorrow, and I think you can still sign up for it. I know we're going to be there.
Right.
Actually spending a half a day with her, talking about these issues and figuring out what we need to do to get better at it. So encourage you to use that as a resource. It's great. So thank you, Ross.
And I want to add one thing. In terms of DiAngelo, I'd also like to recommend her other book, What It Means, or What Does It Mean to Be White? It's a very, very in-depth look at the extent to which we are a white dominant culture in the United States. And when I read the book, it was like, wow, I didn't think of that. She talked about the movie Shrek. Maybe I'll pique your interest with that, and the things that are in Shrek. And that's just one of many examples. And so I would recommend that as well.
Great, good. And next, we're going to hear from Seema.
Everyone said, you know, had such great responses. You know, as Eva said, you're not seeing me, right? You're not acknowledging that my lived experience is different from yours, and it truly does come from friends. Like that is a comment that I've heard from so many of my friends, and it does come, you know, from a good place. But you know, I had to tell the story to my friend because she said, "Oh, you know, I don't see color." She had tears in her eyes. She's like, "You're my equal. You're the same to me. I don't see it." And I said, "But you have different experiences than I do." And I told her a story about when I picked up my girls from school, how I was mistaken for being a nanny or caregiver and handed a clipboard that was, "Here, this is for a nanny or caregiver." And many of the white women were just kind of, you know, go in, pick up your kids, and how traumatic that was for me, how excluded I felt. And I asked her, "Have you ever experienced something like that?" And it was only until I shared, you know, such a painful experience that she understood what she was saying was maybe not coming from such a great place.
Yeah. Wow, what a powerful example.
Yeah, that's just great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seema. Carl?
Can I ask you to lift up the name of the book? We've had so many folks ask for the name of the book and the author.
There you go.
Just hold that there. We were
White
putting it in the chat.
Fragility with Robin DiAngelo. And the other book Carol mentioned was
What does it mean to be white? Same author.
Very good videos of her on YouTube, etc. So good resource. Thank you.
Okay.
So Carl, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, I see color more as a group, but not as an individual. The difference for me is this, as I have had an unusual background, but I've been married to a Mennonite girl for 54 years. And my son, I have two son-in-laws, and one of them is German. Now, what makes that interesting, I belong to the International Students Foundation. We've had students stay with us from Germany, France, Botswana, Khartoum, Jeddah, Osaka, all over the world, because I want my children to have a universal attitude about humans. The other thing to me, when I look at people either behave as an individual or they behave as a group. Now, when they behave as a group, they're subject to being influenced by bigotry, prejudice, and all sorts of things. But if they're a strong person, an individual, they will be judged as an individual. So that's a good question, but it really requires a lot more discussion than the time we have today. So in conclusion, I would say, yes, I want to be seen as an African-American man, but I want to be, but my behavior is that of an individual, but not that as a group. Now, over the years, I've been vice chairman of the Urban League in Los Angeles, president of Black Business Association, all kinds of things I've done over the years. But I've always felt, as a historian, not a historian, but someone who loves history, I always felt that we always have to remember that we're like dogs in a kennel. We come in different colors, different sizes, but one thing that describes us all is that we're all dogs. So we're all human beings. We just come in different sizes, different colors, and things like that. That's all I can say right now. But that's the best question of all, I think.
Oh, great. Thank you, Carl. That was great. Again, you can see the perspectives of folks, lots of similarities, but it's the differences in opinion and thought that really cause richness to happen around a question like this. And I love the way Eva started. That question comes from a place of good intent. But the most important thing in dealing and bridging cultural differences is your positive intent is not enough to ensure that you're going to have a positive impact.
Right.
And that we need to get better at sensing when we've had these unexpected negative impacts. sensing what is, asking, being able to ask and have the conversations. I obviously, my good intention didn't land on you the way I intended. Tell me about that. Let's talk about that and keep relationships whole like that. So fantastic. We have a little more time. Yes, Wayne.
I would like to follow up with y'all on that theme, because we want it being pretty industry specific, but I would ask you a question, if you could, and maybe look back in your career, perhaps a moment where you sort of regretted the way that you responded to a let's call it a racial, an interaction that you just knew wasn't appropriate, and how you would have handled it today based on what you've learned. And I just think back to interactions in our industry being in where I wish I would have handled it differently, and today I feel more that I'm able to. But Carol, April, would you mind taking that around the room real quickly?
Yeah. So does anybody have a response to that? Yes, please.
Well, my response is what's come up for me and the awareness that I've had now that these discussions are at a heightened level is the many ways I've protected white fragility. My husband is from Germany, so Carl, I understand what it's like to have, different races in the family, and there have been plenty of instances even growing up in the 60s. I'm a child of the 60s. My dad guarded Martin Luther King Jr. the week before he was assassinated when he came to our hometown. And so I grew up in having my parents protect me from the racist occurrences of that day. And so I say that to share with you that as Black women, we are so resilient, and Black women have so many stories to share, but because of our resiliency, we don't share, we move on, we excel anyway in spite of. And there have been times with microaggressions and macroaggressions that I've chosen to stay silent and not point them out. And that's what I regret now. However, I'm not going to spend so much time on regret now. I'll just really am intentional with pointing them out when I see them, hear them, feel them, experience them from a place of, I know you have good intentions and a good heart. Are you open to me sharing how that lands for me, or what that means, and how I can help you not do that again? So that's my 2 cents.
Fantastic.
What a nice way to, are you open to? I love that. Yeah, because protecting white fragility, and that was a great phrase as well. And April and I have experienced not wanting to push our fellow white people, if you will, because we are obviously white, backwards in training, because it's sort of like the medical admonition not to, first do no harm, right? Because we want to bring people along. At the same time, that sometimes it didn't feel like the best way to do things. And this moment has sort of kind of kicked the door open, if you will, and made it more possible to be direct. And so I love the way you put that. Are you open to me telling you? Fill in the blank with the rest of the sentence. That was great. Thank you.
Another panel member want to react to that? Wish you had handled something differently?
Well, if I could, I'd just like to mention, part of the reason why we're all here is because I think you'll agree, because of the George Floyd incident, that this really ignited the entire nation. But one of the things I wanted to point out to everybody is when you look at all the coverage of the protesters, now I'm talking about the civilized protesters. I'm not talking about the ones that were looting and stealing. We don't even need to talk about them. But if you look at all the other ones that were protesting, if you'll notice, a lot of them, it wasn't an all black, it wasn't all black people. There were a lot of white individuals in there, and a lot of them were millennials. A lot of them were younger people. And I really think we need to really embrace that, because I believe that our younger generation, whether they're white or black or Asian or anything else, really do want to see our nation be a nation that is created equal for everyone, not just for the privileged. And I'm hoping that this will be a catalyst and that we will move forward and that we will, make these changes. I think everyone has to also realize they're not all going to happen overnight. We can't expect that on July 1st of next year, or excuse me, January 1st of next year, that, oh, everything's just going to be beautiful and we're all going to be 100% equal. Well, no, it's going to take work. And it's also going to take our Congress and our White House to make things happen. And I won't get into the politics aspect of it, but I'm hoping for a change because I think we need a change. And I think only through that change will we see, changes with respect to making sure that we do follow the path that we're on right now.
Great. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seema or Carl?
Yes, I'd like to say something. Ross, I thought that was an excellent insight. When my wife and I were on the March in Washington in 1963, you had quite a few white supporters. So social progress has always been with the help of people of goodwill. Whether you're talking about the abolitionists, whether you're talking about the people in the civil rights movement of the 60s, or the Black Lives Matters marches. Those white kids are sons and daughters of grandparents and parents of the movement of the 70s, the anti-war movement of the 70s. And they were taught differently. They were taught to be more inclusive. And that's why they wanted to make a statement. And I think that's why I think that our country is at a tipping point in a good way, that things are going to be different from this point forward. Things are going to change faster than ever before. And there's going to be more human and more better race relations, because we realize the bigger problem that we have in this country and on this planet is pollution. So we have to figure out ways of living together with equality among all of us. So that was a good insight.
Great. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Pollution doesn't care, what your dimensions of diversity are. The same as COVID. I mean, we are seeing the emergence of health disparities. We knew they were happening. Many of us did, but the intensity with which that virus has uncovered systemic racism in our country is just absolutely amazing. And it's not. This is the moment, right? I think the tipping point. I pray that it is here. Carol.
The thing that I also wanted to just expand on just a little bit that you said, Carl, had to do with the young white people, and I'm kind of in your age demographic, and so those young white kids that went down south in the 60s, we all got to see that, and and so we've watched that unfold, and now I see my grandchildren. My grandchildren's dads are my sons, and the kind of things that I taught my sons that have now been passed on to my grandchildren, and the kinds of attitudes that they have about these things, I feel proud of. And what I also know, and then I'll be quiet, is that any movement needs allyship from the people who have power. If you're a gay person, you need straight people as allies. If you're a person of color, if you're Black, you need white people who have the reins of power to be in allyship with you, and that has always been the case. And so I heard that in what you said as well. Thank you.
Sure.
We're seeing more and more requests for allyship training. Yeah, Wayne.
I'm going to ask Seema to start this one up. It came from the audience, and it was right up the theme that it had to do with those who have grown up in different generations. It came from Haley, and she's about how do we handle those inappropriate situations from people who unfortunately say things from the past that aren't very appropriate today, and maybe even try to change their minds about some of the ways they think.
Sure. I experienced this a lot in my family, from especially our older generation. Haley mentioned her grandfather. I would say that candidly that my grandparents were racist, absolutely, and they one of the things that they do in our culture, in the Indian culture, is there's a lot of colorism, and they make comments like, oh, it's good that you're lighter than than your brother or than your husband or whatnot. And before, I would just be kind of shocked. You sit with this like, God, how can you say things like that? And what I find myself doing now is really talking back and saying, here's why you can't say this. So I have 2 little girls, like I mentioned, and they are different colors, because, my husband is Indian as well, but he is darker than I am. And I had one of my old aunts come in the house and say, oh God, thank God that the little one is lighter than the older one. I was like, it stops here. You will not say that in my house, because this is not going to happen on my property. Like, I don't want to raise my children that way. I don't want them to feel bad about themselves and about the color they are. They're beautiful. And it doesn't matter if one is lighter or darker. And whether they want to have that conversation elsewhere, that's fine, but it's going to stop with my family, and that generation that's growing up, my daughters will not experience what I experienced growing up.
That's such
They're their mom fighting back.
Really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
It's a perfect example. You may think this, you may believe this, you may talk about this, but not in front of me. You can't say these things in my presence. It's just not, that's not what's going to happen. Yeah.
We have Wayne and
June.
Well, I'm gonna kick it over to June. I do want to let everybody know we're come to that 5-minute.
Yeah.
Up a hard stop on these Zoom events.
May I say one more thing, June? Before
No, we have time. We have 3.5 minutes. But
Go ahead.
Let me just thank these fantastic panel
so
members.
Great. So great.
What an inspiration. You give me hope today, and I really need hope today. So thank you so much. I hope that other people have found it as fascinating and interesting and important as Carol and I have. And I want to say, Yahoo for Lahu, you have 2 of the greatest people to be leading this effort. You are so lucky to have Wayne and June. They are fantastic. They care, they're committed, they're passionate. They will take you places that you haven't been before. So thank you, both of you, for being who you are and working this way.
We loved connecting with them. It was almost instantaneous. So it was